How's everyone doing? Today, I'm responding to the unfortunate interview that was conducted by Carlson with Ernst of AFRAM, the deputy CEO of AFRAM, Ernst Roets. It was a horrible interview. Horrible. But let's go into it. I just want to react to it. I'm just going to play for you the audio and then I'm going to just respond as we go. Okay, let's go. Let's go into it. Of course, everybody knows that AFRAM has been spreading this poison that South Africa is a racist country, white people are being oppressed in South Africa, and all of the jazz. So he had an interview with Carlson in 2018 where he made these claims, but this interview was much worse than that 2018 interview. It was so bad that I was actually so horrified by it. That I decided that I'm just gonna sit down. It's a long interview, but I'm gonna have to sit down and respond to it. I have to respond to it because of how bad it is. It demands me to respond to it. But it's also it's bad. It's infuriating. It's upsetting, and. In many respects, it's actually very sad. It's very sad. But, yeah, just give me 1 second, then I'm gonna go into it. Okay, let's go into it.
South Africa and America was very involved with the setting up of the political system that
Yes.
we have in South Africa during the 90s. And it was, of course, the end of history era. Everyone is excited about the fall of the Berlin Wall and the whole world's going to be liberal and democratic, including African countries.
Yes.
And Samuel Huntington actually cautioned against this in 1996, saying, when he wrote The Clash of Civilizations,
Yes.
and he said, don't expect of African leaders and African liberation movements to suddenly become Western when you give them Western constitutions, because they are still African. So they will it's the democratic paradox. They will use democratic institutions to promote non-democratic ends.
Okay, let's just stop it there, right there. What he's saying here is so outwardly racist, because he's basically saying that black Africans are incapable of running a democracy in a democratic fashion. That's what he's saying, because he's not talking about white Africans, because before that, white Africans were running this oppressive regime that ended in 1994. What he's talking about is that black Africans are incapable of running a democracy. That's what he's saying. This statement is so outwardly racist that I can't believe that he actually went on camera and said something this racist, because they keep denying that they are racist. But I've said before that AFRAM is a racist organization. But here is beginning of the interview where they are setting the table. He's saying that black Africans are incapable of running a democracy. That's what he's saying. This basically, you can go watch it yourself, watch it, re-watch it. That's basically what he's saying. It is so offensive and so racist that it upset me so much. But anyways, okay, let's continue.
And that's what we see in South Africa. We have a parliament, we have a very liberal constitution. But if you read the constitution and you compare that to reality in South Africa, it's two completely different worlds. The de facto and the de jure reality in South Africa is irreconcilable. And so what has been happening in South Africa...
Okay, he's saying that there's no democracy in South Africa. That's basically what he's saying. And I wonder what his opinion was about the past, before 1994. What is his opinion when white people are running the show? What is his opinion of that? Was that a democracy? I know that they were voting every 4 years. Was that a democracy, yes or no? And the fact that he's saying that South Africa is not... do you hear what these people... They're saying South Africa is not a democracy in reality. Because he's saying that on paper and in reality, de facto and de jure. So he's saying that in reality, South Africa is not a democracy. That's what he's saying. Is this the case? And he's tying that with the fact that black Africans are not able to run a democracy. That's basically what he just said. These are the people who are being entertained in Western capitals, in the White House, in Capitol Hill.
Is firstly, there was this major excitement about the new South African Nelson Mandela, the miracle story. Oprah spoke about this, and Charlize Theron,
yes.
and everyone. But the reality on ground level was in many ways the opposite. And I think a lot
from the beginning.
Gradually. So they started, for example, with these BEE, as they call it. It's Black Economic Empowerment, which of course has nothing to do with economic empowerment. They started with that in 1996. And so they actually said initially in the 90s that that's the ruling party's strategy. They still call it that, the National Democratic Revolution, which is about using democracy to promote socialist ends.
There it is. There it is. Okay. Black people are incapable of running a democracy. Black people are going to use democracy to push other things. But now the problem with this is that they are not applying that same logic to white socialist nations like Denmark, Norway, Finland, all of those. What's the word for those nations? But I mean, they are overtly like socialist. They're not saying that their color doesn't make them, is the reason why they are using democracy to push socialism. There is no continent in the world that is as socialist as Europe. So Europe is the socialist capital in the world. They're also not using the same logic to say, okay, the reason why Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are socialists is because of the color of their skin. Like the stadium is just so racist on its face that I can't believe that. I can't believe this shit. I really can't believe it. Wow. Wow. And even if we go to say that, okay, all of these autocratic nations, for instance, nations that don't have a democracy like Russia and Belarus and Georgia, which are Moldova, which are all white, I've never heard them say anything about that. The reason why these countries don't have a functional democracy is because of the rest of the color of their skin. It's because they are Europeans. But when he wants to push a view that Africans can't run a democracy, it's because they're Africans that they can't run a democracy. Whether it is true or not that they can't run a democracy is a story for another day. But it's just, there is no escaping it that it's a racist position. He's advancing a racist position. That's what it is. Okay, let's continue.
And so the revolution, they say, it goes in two phases. The first phase is present yourself as being liberal and democratic and get support, especially international support and local, and then use multi-party democracy as a way of promoting the goals of taking the country down the road to socialism. And so recently they even went as far as publishing a document saying...
Okay, I'm going to postpone some of this stuff because I want to go directly to when Tucker Carlson responded to this stuff. Some of it I'm going to have to postpone.
So, you said Samuel Huntington wrote that in 1996, 2 years after the election. I kind of thought that from day one, simply because I knew people there.
What Tucker is saying here is that he actually agrees with this guy. He agrees that Africans are incompatible of running a democracy. Do these guys actually realize what they're saying here? And in my view, I've never really considered Tucker as a racist person. I always held Tucker in very high regard. But this interview in particular made me wonder that actually Tucker Carlson might very well be a racist because of the comments and some of the things that he says in this interview. At the beginning, something that I didn't play, is that Tucker said actually that modern day South Africa is more racist than apartheid South Africa. That is what he said. I'm like, seriously? Seriously? How do you even start to refute something that is so stupid? And you see a lot of those comments online where white South Africans say that the apartheid government was more just than this current government. There's a lot of that stuff being said by white South Africans online. It's actually astonishing. And so I was reading a comment earlier today on Facebook, some white South Africans saying that everyone did better in apartheid. Everyone. Do you folks actually really believe this shit? Do you really believe it? Yeah, but I'm gonna have to jump some of it to hear some of what their views are with regards to Nelson Mandela. Okay, let's hear that.
Political system in South Africa, and there was a lot wrong, but it's simply not the case that he went to prison for being a good leader.
Well, I think that most people would.
The slogan of this operation was "Shamelessly we shall attack the weak, and shamelessly we shall flee from the strong." So those were the circumstances in the 1960s.
Pretty noble policy statement there. Will attack the weak and flee from the strong.
Yeah, and it's still on their website. You can find it there. So that was an attempt at an armed uprising. Now we can talk about everything that was wrong with the previous political system in South Africa, and there was a lot wrong, but it's simply not the case that he went to prison for being a good leader.
Well, I think that most people would acknowledge the distinction between military action, which is a fight, a war, a battle between militaries, and attacks on civilians, which is something we call terrorism.
Yes. So in 1980...
Now they advance in this view that Nelson Mandela was a terrorist. He went to prison because he was a terrorist. He's saying that the South African government has been pushing the idea that Nelson Mandela went to prison because he was a good leader. But he wasn't. He didn't go to prison because he was a good leader. He went to prison because of the terrorism of the Mkondo, which is the armed wing of the African National Congress. And then now Tucker obviously is going to this issue of there's a difference between a war between two militaries and killing of civilians. And now for me the question is that with particular with regards to AfriForum supports Israel. So do they also think that the Israeli government is a terrorist group because they kill civilians and have been slaughtering killed more than 30,000 civilians who have nothing to do with Hamas? But then when you ask that question, is Netanyahu a terrorist? Yes or no? Yes or no? Also, we need to go to the issue of saying, why was Umkhonto weSizwe founded, the ANC's military arm? Why was it founded? And also, if these people were killing civilians, the ANC's military arm, how many civilians were killed by the apartheid government? Children, women, civilians, non-combatants. How many people disappeared? Extrajudicially killings, imprisonments, illegal imprisonments, kidnapping, disappearings. How many of these things were committed by the white government? Why was Umkhonto weSizwe formed? That's a question that needs to be answered. It was formed because the apartheid government was killing people. That's why it was formed. They were slaughtering people, and then eventually the struggle leaders said that, was like, no, you know what? We can't continue in this fashion. We need to return fire with fire. That is what happened. But then they are sitting here saying, oh yeah, Nelson Mandela was a terrorist. Is that where we are now? We're going back to that Nelson Mandela was a terrorist. Folks, what is this? Really, what is this? Okay, let's go further.
5, the ANC had a conference in Kabwe in Zambia, and they took a formal decision that in their so-called military operations, they would not differentiate between hard and soft targets. So it was officially a policy that says we can kill innocent people. And a lot of innocent people died in the political violence in the run-up to 1994. And 90% of the people who died were black South Africans.
Right.
Okay. The ANC was killing civilians, killing black civilians. Okay, sure. Between the year of 1970 and 1989, how many civilians were killed by the apartheid government? How many, especially then compare that to how many civilians died in the hands of the ANC between that time. When I talk about civilians dying, how many were killed? And then also, how many civilians were killed by the Israeli government between the year 1908 to right now? How many civilians were killed? By the Israeli government, which they both support, by the way, they support Israel. How many were killed by Israel? When I talk about killing of civilians, let's talk about it.
It was...
But non-combatants, women, children.
Yeah, women and children.
Passers-by, people had nothing to do with anything.
Yes, especially.
And so, during that time that Mandela was in prison, I'm 55, so I remember this very, very well. His wife was effectively his spokesman, Winnie Mandela. Yeah. And she was lionized in the United States. She was a hero. She was the mother of an emerging nation, a woman of peace and decency, really a transcendent figure, a holy figure. And then it turned out that actually she was in the leadership.
I'm not going to go into this issue now where they are slandering Winnie Mandela, calling her a murderer and all that. If you want to call Nelson Mandela, Winnie Mandela a murderer, let's talk about in terms of why was the ANC, why did the ANC, because there's a big difference between the ANC right up to Abid Luthuli to the time when the ANC founded Umkhonto weSizwe. What was the difference? Why did the ANC that was doing peaceful protests right through the 60s to the point where the ANC took a break from peaceful protest? Why did that happen? And also, how many peaceful protesting kids were shot by the apartheid government, shot and killed? How many peaceful protesting people were murdered, were disappeared, kidnapped, tortured? How many? Because if you want to slander the people of the ANC, I'm not even an ANC fan for killing people. Let's talk about the killings, okay? When I talk about the killings in the 80s, in the 90s, 80s, 70s, who really was killing more people at the time?
I think an important component here that is very well documented, it's not a secret, but a lot of people don't seem to want to know this or recognize this, is the very strong alliance that the ANC has always had and still has with the South African Communist Party, and the extent to which they were supported not just by the Soviet Union, also by the Vietnamese and by Mao Zedong as well, implementing what they call the People's War strategy that they got from Mao Zedong.
Okay, the ANC has an alliance with the South African Communist Party. So what? And our struggle was supported by the Soviet Union, Mao's China. Okay, so they were supporting our struggle while the West was on the side of our oppressors. Like, what is this? Are we now going back to this Marxism bullshit? That if there's some sort of association with communism, that means that your grievances are not justified. Is that what we're doing? Because I can tell you now that Russia has always been on the right side of our struggle as black people, which is why black South Africans support Russia to this day, while the United States was always on the wrong side of our struggle. So really, I just need to understand that because these people were recognizing the fact that we are oppressed, while the West, Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, and all of those guys were busy actively supporting and arming our oppressors. So, like, I don't really know. Do you think that history is on your side of this issue? Because I know that white South African has been always justifying why they are killing black civilians and they are fighting communism. It's always been their excuse. We're fighting communism. Really? Was the choice between before South Africa communism and the white oppression of black people? What were those two choices? And then somehow that if a government has some friendly leanings towards, and I don't even support socialism or communism, but does it mean that if someone have friendly leanings towards a communist government, that means that that government is illegitimate? Oh, okay. Let's go down that road. So when the United States was supporting the communist government that came before Fidel Castro, because that government was communist, did it mean that the United States was, illegitimate? Because we know that the United States supported that communist government before Fidel Castro. And we also know that the United States supported the communist government in Venezuela before Chavez. So does that mean that the United States was illegitimate because of that? Guys, what is this, guys? What is this? What is this? I really would like to understand what this is.
So yes, it was very much, the ANC saw themselves as being the African or South African frontier of promoting a socialist or a communist revolution.
So how did it turn out?
Well, if you mean in terms of where we are today.
Let's just follow different threads. So let's just start with, technology and infrastructure. What did in 1993, South Africa was famously the most prosperous society in Africa by far.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see. This is where you really piss me off. In 1993, South Africa was one of the most prosperous nations in the world. South Africa, what you mean by South Africa is that it didn't include townships, it didn't include all black communities, and it didn't include any of the black populations. What you mean by South Africa, you mean that white South Africa. That's what you mean. Because after that, they became one South Africa, which included all of these poor and oppressed people, which came in and diluted all of your good numbers, right? It's basically like saying, because if you want to talk about how that, for instance, Israel is this prosperous and advanced society and civilization, you are obviously excluding all those 2 million people in Gaza. You are excluding all of those, 5 million people in the West Bank. You are just talking about the areas where white Jews live in Israel. That's what you're talking about. And then now you are saying, do you guys really want to go down this road? Where you want to compare how a country that only included 7% of the population, while using the 85% of the population as free and cheap labor to prop up this 7% of the population, you want to compare that with how it's like now when we are measuring metrics and data based on the full population. Is that really what you guys are trying to do here? Folks, can we just not do this? Can we not do this? Can we please not do this?
Right? And among the most prosperous in the world, correct? They had nuclear weapons in South Africa.
Yes.
Yeah. What is it like now, 30 years later?
Well, the reality is that virtually every sphere of society is collapsing, with the exception of taxation, of course, and tax collection. That's still very, very efficient. Maybe I can explain it this way. So America has a somewhat skewed tax system with, if my information is correct, about 85% of income tax in America is paid by about 10% of the people.
I think that's correct.
So 1 in 10. In South Africa, 85% of income tax is paid by 1 in 30 people. So it's a very small number of people, a very small portion of society that pays tax, that is heavily taxed. And then about almost half of the population in South Africa get money from the government in the form of social grants. If you add government employees, conservative estimates say that 50% of people in South Africa get money from the government. Some estimates say it's up to 60% of adults, voting age adults, get money from the government each year. So then...
Okay. Yeah, this is where things start falling off, because now you're talking about the actual bad policies of the NC that has destroyed this country in the past 30 years. I just want to know, though, what does this has anything to do with the claims that white people are being targeted? Because we all know that the ANC government has failed. Black South Africans are not happy with the ANC. Everyone is not happy with the ANC. How does this go into the argument that says that you are being oppressed? I would really like to know.
In this money, of course, is then used. It's given out as social grants, but what's left is used to set up these programs that are actively discriminating against taxpayers. There are so many examples. One of the most recent ones is this Blacks Only Fund that the government has set up, whereby they give money to black entrepreneurs exclusively.
I would like to go into this allegation of funds that are funding black entrepreneurs only. But I don't have time for it, because there's a lot of bullshit that is being said in this video. That topic alone is an entire video, because there's a lot of bullshit that these people like to say that we need to respond to. And if I'm going to respond into that in the context of this video, I'm going to spend another 2 hours. So because of that, I'm going to have to say I'm going to respond to this on another time. Even maybe it might not be a response video, it might just be a video that I'm making. But I'm going to, because there's a lot of talks here on the white South African, so 140 race-based laws, 400 race. There's a whole lot of crap that is being said here, and we need to actively engage with it. Because a whole lot of it is just, it's bullshit. Sorry, what it is. But with that said, social welfare or social programs in this country, which is more than 80% of the benefit, money that is being taken, that is benefits received by people, does not discriminate based on race. All of those social benefits are need-based only. I'm not saying that they are a good idea. I'm not saying that I support them, but I'm saying that they are needs-based only. It is just not true that poor white South Africans are not receiving social welfare based on their card. That's just absolutely not true. And that would include those benefits that are received by people who are old age benefits. Every single white black South African who is over 65 is receiving those benefits. I think it's 2,000 a month. As long as you don't have a job, or your spouse is, or you are running a business, or as long as you meet the need-based requirements, your color doesn't matter. This issue of businesses, funding of businesses who say, okay, it's black, that's the minority of government benefits. And I don't have the time to go into it right now, because if I do that right now, I'm not going to treat it very. I'm not going to treat it fairly. So I'm not going to go into it. I want to respond to the next point that they talked about, which is the issue of whites being killed in South Africa. Let's go into that.
One of the reasons that I find this story so fascinating is not simply because, it's like the classical, irony of history. This, group comes in with one aim and then achieves exactly the opposite. We're going to have we're going to end racism and then make racism much worse, but also because they
Tucker needs to stop with his crap of saying that the current South African government made racism worse. That is just not true. That is just not true. Do we need to even talk about this? Before 1994, South Africans could not live in the same neighborhoods based on race before 1994. They couldn't go to the same schools. They couldn't do the same jobs. They couldn't even use the same sort of transport, drink from the same taps, go to the same buildings, through the same doors. That was 1994. In 1994, blacks couldn't go to certain universities. They couldn't get certain jobs beyond a certain skill level. They were not allowed to study medicine and engineering. There were very few who were able to. And you are telling me that in 2025, racial discrimination of that nature has become worse? Is that what you are? Because that's what you are saying. That, guys, can you just stop with this? What is this? What is this? Racism is worse in South Africa in 2025 than it was in 1994. Is that your claim, Tucker? Is that your claim?
They have gone about it in a way that's almost like American. The same language, the same diversity
absolutely.
is our strength, kind of sloganeering, and it's had the same result, which is to basically kill whites. And I mean, that's just true. And I wonder if you see that. It's almost like you imported our kind of intellectual class framework for this project.
No, that's absolutely the case. So there's a theory. There was this video that just went viral on social media of this guy talking about how white people are subhuman and all of that. And they get, this is taught at universities in South Africa. There's a theory.
Stop it. I'm sure he's talking about Nota, the video that I made about Nota condemning him. And Nota there's a case already pending before the Equality Court. And statements like that are so rare that the fact that you want to use such a fringe and rare incident to justify that there's this pent-up anger and racism towards white people, it's just, you are just being dishonest. You're being dishonest. This guy has a case before the Equality Court for hate speech. And I've covered this in one of the videos that I made, condemning it. And most people condemn this, and it is so rare that it's unheard of. How are you using it as an example for anything?
Called Azania critical theory. Azania is a pan-African word for South Africa. And they actually get this from Americans like Robin DiAngelo, who's this Ibrahim X. Kendi, Ta-Nehisi Coates, these people. They get it from them, and then they put an African flavor on it, which essentially boils down to a theory that justifies the targeting and extermination of the white minority. And so the theory, to summarize, goes more or less like this. There's an African term called Ubuntu, which means brotherliness, or it's about your internal humanity. It's a Zulu term. And the theory goes that white people are incapable of having Ubuntu. But Ubuntu is the essence of humanity. So if you don't have it, you're not truly human. So it boils down that the logical conclusion is that if you kill a white person, then you did not actually commit murder.
Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. There is no such thing anywhere in South Africa that white people are incapable of Ubuntu. That just doesn't exist. That just doesn't exist. I would have to, please give me widespread evidence where people are saying that white people are incapable of Ubuntu, and where that is being used as a justification that, okay, white people are incapable of Ubuntu, therefore killing them is not mad. Why are you lying like this? Why do you flying all the way from South Africa to Washington DC to lie? This is just not true. It's not happening. There's no such thing happening in South Africa where it's been said anywhere in the public square that white people are incapable of Ubuntu. That is just overt bullshit. It is just simply not true. But here you are lying about this shit. Jesus.
So this is not widely believed in South Africa, but this is taught at universities by university professors, and
No. Universities in South Africa are left-leaning, yes, as most universities everywhere in the world. There's a lot of leftist bullshit in these universities. And there's a lot of very dangerous ideas that come from universities. But telling me that it's being taught in South African universities that it's justifiable to kill white South Africans, that's just simply not true. You're going to have to show me which university, which course, show me the course notes, page and stanza where it's been taught that it's justifiable to kill white people, and that this being taught in South African universities. And I'm obviously assuming you're talking about the humanities, because all of the bad ideas in universities everywhere in the world, including in Europe, the US, Canada, Australia, and South Africa, are coming from the humanities. The humanities are a cesspool. And I'm not going to go into that because I'm personally conservative. But this is just not true. It's just not true.
it's certainly believed by radical elements.
It's a predicate for genocide. I mean, it's always the same in every. I mean, we're watching it in parts of the world now. They're not fully human, right? So we can kill them because they're fully human. Then it's of course a grave sin to kill them.
Yeah, well, we've always been saying that there's not a genocide in South Africa. Looking at what happened in Rwanda and so forth, it's not the same thing.
Oh, okay. Now it's not a genocide in South Africa. Okay, now you're admitting there's no genocide. Oh, okay. That's interesting. That's interesting.
But it is very alarming to look at some of these claims that are being made and to compare that to what was made in Rwanda.
Well, every country, and genocide broadly defined, an attempt to eliminate a group of people on the basis of their race or ethnicity.
Yeah, and we have these political parties chanting, I mean, you've seen this, you've reported on this, chanting, kill the Boer, kill the farmer, to a stadium filled with people. And it's not just rhetoric, so they would say, no, it's just a metaphor. But it's preceded by a speech about how white people are criminals and should be treated like criminals, how everything they have is illegitimate and stolen, in which people are encouraged to go and invade their farms and so forth. And then they chant, kill the Boer, kill the farmer, and they make these hand gestures. Of course, the Boer is a reference to the Afrikaner people. But the reality is also that the farmers are being attacked and killed on their farms. So it's not just a metaphor.
Okay, guys. I've already made a video about the meaning of "Kill the Boer" song, whether it's an incitement to kill white people. Just go watch it for yourself. Just go watch it.
Metaphor. And our attempts at researching this has found that there's an increase in farm attacks when the political climate becomes heated or warmer.
No, false. The AfriForum failed to prove this in court when they took the EFF to court to show that there is a link between that, or even that there is an increase at all of farm murders. They failed to prove this in court, but they continue to perpetuate this lie. And they appealed this thing and they lost. They failed to meet the burden of proof that there is an increase of farm murders, or that there is even a link between singing this song and farm murders. They failed to show the end of that evidence. But everywhere they go, they continue to repeat these falsehoods.
And these type of statements are made in a way that's highly publicized. You do get an increase in farm attacks, and it's very brutal and very horrific farm attacks that we see. So,
if you're going to say that there is a link between one event, you need to be able to show it with evidence, not just allege it. You need to be able to show it with evidence, and even using their own so-called research in a court of law, in a case between the AfriForum and Julius Malema, who is not my friend or I'm not a big fan of, they failed to show that evidence. But inability to show this evidence has not stopped them to make these claims. These are the people that we're dealing with.
The farmer tax are a tax against white farmers, not against...
Not exclusively white farmers, but it's a tax against farmers in South Africa, of which the majority is white.
Right, okay. So this has been going on a long time. I think it's been well documented. I believe you wrote a book about it,
Yes.
which has become very... sold a lot of copies on Amazon, I noticed.
Yes.
And so none of this is like a secret, and all of it's verifiable because, dead people are pretty easy to track.
No, Taka, no. In fact, a commission of inquiry was conducted in 2000. A report was released in 2001 showing that of all the farm murders that happened, 5% of those were racially motivated. 95% of those were not racially motivated. This was done in 2000, released in 2001. And then you continue to say, it's well documented, it's verifiable. No, it's not true. It's simply not true. This thing is so serious to the point that the South African government instituted a commission of inquiry where millions of rands were spent to investigate this matter. And the results were very clear and unanimous that these farm murders are not racially motivated. But you continue to make these claims.
Because they're dead.
Yeah, so we have the names of the people who've been murdered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in the United States, the country that inspired the revolution that you're living through, our media have ignored that and then gone beyond ignoring it to attack anyone who brings it up as a, quote, white supremacist.
Yeah, well...
Yeah, I'm going to skip that.
I would disagree with you. I think what they're saying is the people getting murdered deserve to be murdered, so stop complaining about it.
Yeah, well, a few people are saying that out loud, but it does seem to be the same.
Look, at some point, I don't need you to explain your motive if I have a clear glimpse of your actions. If I know what you're doing, I don't have to hear you explain why you're doing it. I already know because the motive is displayed in the action.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in other words, if I pulled out a gun and shoot you, and somebody said, "Did you not like Ernst?"
Yeah.
I can say whatever I want, but I just shot you. So I think it's kind of fair to infer that I didn't like you.
Yeah,
right?
But the motive is also explained in the words.
I'm going to say something that's going to infuriate some of you. But I don't give a shit because I'm not here to kiss anyone's ass. I'm here to tell the truth. This issue of white people being... I'm stopping this responding to because the rest of it... I'm stopping it here. It's similar to BLM. The BLM claims. And I've never actually seen two phenomena that are so identical to each other to this extent. You have two groups of people on the opposite sides of the Pacific Ocean. Both of them believing falsely that they are being targets because of their because of their skin color. Both of them refusing to engage the stats, the demographic information, the data, insistent in that they are being persecuted because of the race of their skin. And then you have a media supporting it. And in this case, I suppose with this issue of white genocide, the media doesn't really support it. I think it is so stupid that the only media that I've seen supporting it is the conservative media in the United States. because the media in Europe does not support this crazy notion. And the media also in Australia support this crap of white farmers being targeted because of race and all that. But with regards to BLM, you have media all over the world supporting this crap. And it's just simply not true. And then I'm very convinced that right now I'm going to have black viewers who also believe this bullshit. Who are going to be upset with me because they are also have been smoking that crap. And there was a time actually, I think 2 years ago, where I wrote a long post on Facebook about BLM, going through statistics, data of shootings of unarmed men in the US, the likelihood of each racial group being involved in shootings. I went through stat after stat after stat. I concluded after that black people are not being targeted in the United States for racial killings. And this position, by the way, is a position that Tucker Carlson agrees with. And then we have a similar situation in South Africa, where, because also in the US, no one is denying that you've seen blacks being shot by the cops unjustly. No one is denying that these things happen. What people are denying is that that black people are targets of the police. That based on the stats, it's not true. That is what people deny, including myself. That based on the numbers, and a lot of the times when we go down to the numbers and people say that one murder is one too many, which is another story altogether. Also the same issue here with the white farmers and whatnot. Based on the numbers, it is just not true. White people in particular, I even said in a prior video, they are the least likely group to be a victim of homicide in South Africa. Because even if you take all the murder stats, including white farmers, because these people are not interested in black farm workers who are being killed by white farmers. They're not interested in that. If you take all murders, including white farmers, white South Africans are the most insulated group when it comes to crime. And there are reasons for that. There are reasons for that. And also, we've already said that studies have already been done to debunk this. You can go check it yourself. The report of the Commission of Inquiry that was done more than 20 years ago, because they've been lying about this for 20 years. And then 20 years ago, the study was done. You can go verify this. But in a similar fashion with the BLM people who have no interest in the facts, stats, data, demographic information, these people have no interest in the stats, data, demographic information. They are only interested in the narrative. And we have to deal with this crap. It's very unfortunate, actually, and it's very infuriating. And I can tell you now that this guy, this Ernst guy, he's living a very good life in South Africa. He's living a very good life. Like, white people have such a good life in South Africa that it's unfucking believable. How good they have it in South Africa. But we have to entertain this crap. Really, but I must say that I'm very disappointed in Tucker Carlson. Like, I'm very disappointed. I'm very disappointed. I'm very disappointed. Yeah. Anyways, folks. Yeah, that's it. That's it. See you.